I'm Carl, and last winter, my friends Usman, David, and I decided we needed a break from the city. We found this remote, cozy-looking cottage online, deep in the mountains of Colorado. The pictures showed a rustic cabin surrounded by pristine snow-covered forest. It looked like the perfect getaway. The reviews were glowing, all 5 stars, which was a little weird for such an isolated place. But we didn't think much of it. We packed our bags, excited for a week of hiking, fireside chats, and just disconnecting from everything. If only we knew what we were really disconnecting from. We arrived late in the afternoon. The air was crisp and so cold it stung your lungs. The cottage was just as advertised, nestled among towering pine trees heavy with snow. It was utterly silent, the kind of silence that's so deep it almost hums. As we unloaded the car, I noticed something odd. There were no animal tracks anywhere. No squirrels, no rabbits, not even a bird. It was like the forest was holding its breath. David pointed it out too. He's the outdoorsy one in our group. He just shrugged and said, maybe it's too cold for them. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. That first night was when things started to get strange. We made a fire, cooked dinner, and were just enjoying the warmth of the hearth. Around 10 p.m., we heard it, a soft tapping on one of the windows. Tap, tap, tap. It was a rhythmic, deliberate sound. Usman joked that it was a branch, but there was no wind. The trees outside were perfectly still. David went to the window and peered out into the darkness. He saw nothing. He pressed his face against the cold glass, cupping his hands to block the reflection. He stood there for a long moment before stepping back, his face pale. He said he saw a pair of eyes far back in the tree line, just watching us. He described them as too big and too bright. We tried to laugh it off, blaming it on the long drive and our tired minds, but none of us could shake the chill that ran down our spines. The tapping stopped, but the feeling of being watched never left. The next day, we decided to go for a hike, hoping the daylight would chase away the unease from the night before. We followed a trail marked on a map we found in the cottage. The forest was beautiful, but that strange, unnatural silence persisted. After about an hour of walking, we came across something that made us stop in our tracks. It was a series of animal tracks in the snow. But they were wrong. They started as what looked like a coyote's prints, clear and distinct, but then, a few yards later, they began to change. The prints grew larger, the gait widening, until they looked less like a coyote and more like a large wolf. Then, the transformation became even more bizarre. The wolf prints morphed into something else entirely. The tracks became deeper, longer, and ended with 2 large, almost human-looking footprints, before vanishing completely. There were no other tracks around, no sign of where the creature or person had gone. It was as if it had simply vanished into thin air. David, our resident expert, had no explanation. He just stared at the tracks, his jaw tight. He told us we needed to go back to the cottage. Now, as we hurried back, the sun began to set, casting long, eerie shadows through the trees. That's when we heard the whistling. It was a faint, high-pitched tune, carried on the wind. It sounded like a person, but it was coming from all directions at once. First from our left, then our right, then from somewhere high up in the trees above us. It was a simple, haunting melody, and it followed us all the way back to the cottage. Every time we stopped to listen, it would stop too. The moment we started walking, the whistling would begin again, a little closer this time. The feeling of being hunted was overwhelming. We practically ran the last 100 yards, fumbling with the keys before slamming the door shut and locking it behind us. We didn't leave the cottage again. That night was the worst. The tapping on the windows returned, but this time it was on all of them, all at once. Tap, tap, tap. A frantic, desperate sound, as if something was trying to find a way in. Then came the scratching, a long, sharp, scraping sound against the wooden walls of the cabin. It circled the house, moving with an unnatural speed. We huddled together in the center of the living room, a fire poker in my hand and a heavy log in David's. The scratching was joined by a new sound. A voice. It was whispering just outside the door. It was faint at first, but then it became clearer. It was mimicking our voices. First, it was my mother, her voice filled with panic, begging me to open the door, saying she was lost and cold. I almost fell for it, my heart lurching. But David grabbed my arm. He reminded me my mum was 1,000 miles away. Then, the voice changed. It became Usman's girlfriend, crying, saying she'd driven all this way to surprise him. Usman froze, his eyes wide with terror. We could hear the perfect imitation of her sobs, the exact cadence of her speech. It was using our memories, our loved ones, to try and lure us out. The most terrifying moment came around 3 a.m. The sounds stopped. The silence returned, thicker and heavier than before. We waited, our ears straining for any noise. Then, a loud, violent bang shook the entire cabin. It came from the roof. It sounded like something incredibly heavy had just landed on it. We heard slow, deliberate footsteps pacing back and forth, right above our heads. The wooden beams groaned under the weight. A fine dust of snow and wood trickled down from the ceiling. Then, we heard it begin to dig, the sound of claws or sharp talons tearing at the shingles, trying to rip its way through the roof. We were trapped. There was nowhere to run. David grabbed his phone, his hands shaking so badly he could barely unlock it. Miraculously, he found a single bar of service. He didn't hesitate. He dialed 911. As David whispered our location to the dispatcher, the thing on the roof stopped digging. It was as if it heard him. There was a long, terrible pause, and then we heard a voice, clear as day, coming from right outside the front door. But, Timmy wasn't a mimic. It was a guttural, inhuman snarl that turned into a low, raspy laugh. It was a laugh of pure malice, of ancient evil that knew it had won. It knew we were terrified. It was enjoying it. The laugh faded, and the forest fell silent once more. We stayed awake until sunrise, backs against the wall, not daring to move or speak. The police arrived just as the first rays of light hit the snow. They found the cottage empty, besides us three. But when they inspected the outside, they found deep gouge marks all over the walls and the door, and on the roof, a section of shingles had been torn away, leaving a gaping hole. But the most disturbing discovery was the tracks. A single set of tracks leading away from the cottage. They started as large, clawed footprints, and then slowly morphed into the prints of a man walking barefoot in the snow before disappearing at the edge of the woods. We never went back to Colorado. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls just right, I swear I can still hear that faint, high-pitched whistling. And I know, whatever it was, it remembers us. Thank you for listening, and please, be careful where you vacation. Follow for more stories. Have you ever heard your own voice when you know you weren't speaking? It's a chilling experience, one that still sends shivers down my spine whenever I think about that night. I used to work the night shift at a dusty, forgotten motel just off a desolate stretch of highway in Arizona. The kind of place where the silence is so deep, you can hear your own heartbeat. That particular night, the air was heavy and still, the kind of quiet that feels like it's holding its breath. The only sounds were the hum of the ancient vending machine and the occasional rattle of the ice maker. Around those AM, the phone on the front desk rang, jolting me out of my half-asleep state. The sound was unnaturally loud in the dead quiet. Primera picked it up, expecting a late traveler, or a wrong number. Desert Bloom Motel, how can I help you? I said, my voice thick with sleep. There was a pause on the other end, just static and a faint, rhythmic breathing. I was about to hang up, thinking it was a prank call, when a voice crackled through the line. It was my voice, exactly my voice. It said, "Is there a room available for the night?" My blood ran cold. It wasn't just a similar voice, it was identical. The same pitch, the same slight rasp from being tired. I stood frozen, my mind racing. Was this a recording? A prank? I couldn't form a word. The voice on the other end spoke again, a little impatient this time. "Hello, I need a room, just for a few hours." My own words, my own inflection. I stammered, "Who is this?" There was a dry, raspy chuckle on the other end, a sound that was definitely not mine. Then the line went dead. My heart was pounding against my ribs. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a new app, some kind of voice mimicking software, but out here, in the middle of nowhere. Who would be pulling such a sophisticated prank? I peered out the large glass window of the reception area, scanning the dark, empty parking lot. Nothing, just the faint glow of the neon vacancy sign, casting long, eerie shadows. The wind had started to pick up, whistling through the cracks in the old building, making the whole place feel like it was groaning. I tried to busy myself, rearranging pamphlets, wiping down the already clean counter. Anything to distract myself from the gnawing fear, but the echo of my own voice lingered in my ears. Every creak of the building, every gust of wind sounded like a footstep just outside the door. I kept glancing at the phone, half expecting, half dreading it to ring again. The minutes stretched into what felt like an eternity. The silence was no longer peaceful. It was menacing, filled with an unspoken threat. Just as I started to calm down, telling myself it was just my imagination working overtime, the main entrance door creaked open. The bell above it didn't jingle. It was as if something had deliberately opened it slowly, carefully, to avoid making a sound. My head snapped up. Standing in the doorway was a figure, silhouetted against the dark parking lot. It was tall and unnaturally thin, its limbs long and gangly, moving with a jerky, disjointed motion. It took a step inside, and the dim fluorescent lights of the lobby flickered. My breath hitched in my throat. I couldn't make out any features, just a dark shape that seemed to absorb the light around it. It moved with a strange, predatory grace, its head tilting from side to side as if it was studying me. It took another step closer, and I could hear a faint sound, like dry leaves skittering across pavement. I was paralyzed, my feet rooted to the floor. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to hide, but my body wouldn't obey. The figure stopped right in the middle of the small lobby, about 15 feet from my desk. It just stood there, perfectly still, its dark form a void in the poorly lit room. The silence was deafening. I could feel its gaze on me, even though I couldn't see its eyes. It was a heavy, oppressive feeling, like a physical weight pressing down on me. My mind was screaming, but no sound came out. Then it spoke. "I need a room." It was my voice, coming from that thing. The sound was distorted, stretched, like a recording played on a dying cassette player, but it was unmistakably my voice. The words hung in the air, a grotesque mockery. The thing slowly raised one of its long, thin arms and pointed a finger at me. The finger was too long, bent at an impossible angle. I finally found my voice, a pathetic squeak. "What are you?" It tilted its head again, a quick, bird-like motion that was deeply unsettling. A low, guttural sound rumbled from its direction, a sound that vibrated through the floorboards. It wasn't a laugh. It was something far more ancient and terrifying. It started to walk towards the desk, its movements no longer jerky, but smooth and fluid, like a predator closing in on its prey. Each step was deliberate, silent. I scrambled backward, fumbling for the lock on the door to the back office. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely fit the key in the lock. The thing was getting closer. I could smell it now. A dry, dusty scent, like old bones and desert earth. I finally managed to turn the key, threw the door open, and slammed it shut behind me, locking it from the inside. I slumped against the door, my whole body trembling uncontrollably. On the other side of the door, I heard a soft scratching sound, like claws dragging against the wood. Then, silence. For a moment, I thought it was gone. I held my breath, listening. A soft tapping started on the door. Tap, tap. Then, a voice, a whisper right next to the wood. My voice. "Let me in." I clapped my hands over my mouth to stifle a scream. "It's cold out here," my voice whispered. "I just need a place to rest." The voice was calm, persuasive, but layered with that same distorted, unnatural quality. The scratching started again, more insistent this time, moving up and down the length of the door. Primera vez que Hawaii, pressing myself into the far corner of the small office, my eyes glued to the doorknob. I saw the knob begin to jiggle, slowly at first, then more violently. The metal rattled and strained. Whatever was out there was trying to force its way in. I watched in horror as the lock began to give way, the wood around it splintering. I knew that flimsy office door wouldn't hold for long. I looked around desperately for an escape. There was a small window high up on the back wall, leading out to the back of the motel. With a surge of adrenaline, I dragged a heavy filing cabinet under the window. The sounds from the door were getting louder, a splintering, cracking noise. I scrambled onto the cabinet and fumbled with the window latch. It was rusted shut. I put all my weight into it, grunting with effort as the door behind me began to crack open. With a final, desperate shove, the window sprang open. Just as a long, dark limb reached through the splintered hole in the door, I hoisted myself through the window, tumbling onto the gravel outside. I didn't look back. I just ran. I ran into the darkness of the desert, the thorny bushes tearing at my clothes and skin. I didn't stop running until the sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I never went back to that motel. I left everything behind. Sometimes, late at night, when it's too quiet, I can still hear it. That tapping at the door, and a whisper in my own voice, asking to be let in. I don't think I'll ever feel safe in the silence again. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've ever had a strange experience on a night shift, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more chilling tales. Stay safe out there. The Arizona sun was starting to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. My buddy, Mark, and I were on the last leg of a long hike, the kind that leaves your legs burning but your soul feeling refreshed. We were on a Lestravel trail near Sedona, surrounded by the iconic red rock formations. The air grew cooler, and the usual desert sounds, the chirping of crickets, the rustle of unseen critters began to fill the silence. That's when we first heard it. A faint whistle. It wasn't a bird, and it wasn't the wind. It was a tune, a simple, haunting melody that seemed to drift from just beyond the next bend. We glanced at each other, a silent question passing between us. Who else would be out here this late? We kept walking, our pace a little quicker now. The whistling continued, seeming to stay at the same distance, always just out of sight. It was unnerving, like being watched. The melody would stop, and in the silence that followed, we'd hear a faint scuffling in the brush, just off the trail. We'd stop, listen, and hear nothing. Then, as soon as we started walking again, the whistling would resume. Mark tried to laugh it off. Probably just another hiker trying to be spooky, he said, but his voice was tight. I wasn't convinced. There was something profoundly unnatural about the sound, something that made the hairs on my arms stand up. The sun had almost completely set, and we were forced to switch on our headlamps. The narrow beams cut through the growing darkness, making the familiar landscape feel alien and threatening. That's when the whistling changed. It stopped being a melody and became a mimicry. It started with a perfect imitation of a coyote's yip, so precise it was startling. Then, a hawk's cry, right above our heads. Even though the sky was now a blanket of stars, the mimicry was flawless. Too flawless. Mark and I stopped dead in our tracks. What is that? He whispered, his bravado gone. Before I could answer, we heard a new sound. It was the sound of someone clearing their throat right beside us on the trail. We spun around our headlamps, sweeping across the empty path. There was nothing there, just the dust, the rocks, and the deepening shadows. My heart was hammering against my ribs. This wasn't a prank. This was something else. We started to half walk, half jog, wanting to put as much distance as possible between us and whatever was toying with us. The sounds followed, not just the whistling anymore, but whispers. Faint, guttural whispers that seemed to ride on the breeze, just at the edge of hearing. I couldn't make out any words, but the intent was clear. It was malicious. Then we heard footsteps, not ours. These were heavier, slower, and they were keeping perfect pace with us, just off the trail in the darkness. Every time we sped up, they sped up, Every time we slowed, they slowed. We never saw a thing, but we felt it. A presence, heavy and ancient, walking alongside us. The air grew cold, and a strange, metallic smell, like old blood and damp earth, filled our nostrils. Mark suddenly grabbed my arm, his eyes wide with terror, pointing his headlamp at the ground. There, in the dust of the trail, were tracks, but they weren't human. They were large, canine-like prints, like those of a massive wolf, but they were wrong. The gait was all wrong. They were walking on two legs, one print, then another, in a straight line, as if a bipedal wolf was strolling casually down the path. And the most chilling part, they were fresh. They appeared right behind us as we walked. We were being followed, stalked by something that shouldn't exist. The whispering grew louder, closer. It sounded like it was right behind my ear now, a dry, raspy sound that sent a shiver down my spine. We broke into a full sprint. We didn't care about the treacherous path or the darkness. All that mattered was getting away. Behind us, the footsteps changed. The slow, deliberate pace was gone, replaced by a frantic, loping run. It was gaining on us. We could hear its heavy breathing, a ragged, wet sound that was disturbingly close. It wasn't human, and it wasn't an animal. It was a terrifying hybrid of both. We risked a glance behind us, and for a split second, my headlamp illuminated a figure. It was tall and gaunt, moving with an unnatural, jerky speed. Its limbs were too long, its posture bent and broken. I couldn't see its face, only a vague silhouette against the dark. But that was more than enough. I screamed, a raw, primal sound of pure fear. The creature let out a shriek in response, a sound that was a horrifying mix of a human scream and an animal's cry of pain. It was a sound of pure hatred. We ran harder, fueled by adrenaline and terror. The trail seemed to stretch on forever. The parking lot felt like it was miles away. We could hear it crashing through the brush behind us, getting closer with every second. The whispers had turned into guttural snarls. I could feel its presence, a suffocating aura of malevolence that seemed to drain the very air from my lungs. I stumbled, my ankle twisting on a loose rock. Mark hauled me up, and we kept going, a shared terror binding us together. We weren't just hiking anymore. We were running for our lives. Just when I thought my lungs would burst, I saw it. The faint glint of moonlight on a car windshield. The parking lot. We burst out of the trailhead and scrambled towards my truck, fumbling for the keys. The sounds behind us abruptly stopped as I jammed the key into the lock. I dared one last look back at the trail opening. There was nothing there, just darkness and an unnerving, absolute silence. The crickets had stopped. The wind had died. It was as if the entire desert was holding its breath. We jumped into the truck, locked the doors, and I slammed my foot on the gas. We peeled out of that dirt lot, not looking back until the red rocks were a distant memory in the rearview mirror. We never spoke about the whistling, the whispers, or the thing that walked beside us. We didn't need to. Some things, once they're heard, can never be unheard. And some things, once they've walked beside you in the dark, will follow you forever in your nightmares. The city lights usually gave me comfort. A twinkling sea of humanity stretching out below my friend Leo's top-floor apartment. But that night, they just made the shadows in the parking garage seem deeper, more absolute. It was past midnight, and a thick, unnatural fog had rolled in, swallowing the tops of skyscrapers and muffling the familiar city hum into an eerie silence. I was only up there because I'd left a bag of those ridiculously expansive, artisanal salt and vinegar chips in the back of Leo's vintage Mustang. A silly reason to be out so late, I know, but once the craving hit, it was relentless. I waved goodbye to Leo at his apartment door, promising to be right back. The elevator ride down to the parking garage, which was also on one of the top floors of the sprawling complex, felt unusually long. The air grew colder with each descending level, prickling the hairs on my arms. When the door slid open, the silence was the first thing that hit me. It wasn't just quiet. It was a dead, heavy void. The automatic lights, usually so quick to flicker on, stayed dark, leaving only the dim, sickly orange glow of the emergency exit signs to guide me. My footsteps echoed unnervingly on the concrete as I walked toward the far corner where Leo parked his prized Mustang. The fog was even thicker up here, swirling in lazy, ghost-like tendrils around the support pillars. It clung to everything, making the air damp and heavy in my lungs. I pulled out my phone, its flashlight beam cutting a weak, lonely path through the gloom. There it was, the sleek, dark green muscle car, looking like a sleeping beast in the mist. As I got closer, a strange noise cut through the stillness. It was a faint, rhythmic tapping. Tap. 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 It sounded like someone drumming their fingernails on metal, slow and deliberate. I froze, sweeping my light around. The garage was supposed to be empty. Leo was the only one with a reserved spot on this level. My heart started a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. "Hello," I called out, my voice sounding small and pathetic. The tapping stopped. The silence that rushed back in was somehow worse. I told myself it was just the building settling, or maybe a loose piece of pipe dripping. Paranoid, I just needed to grab the chips and get back to the warmth of Leo's apartment. I reached the Mustang and peered through the driver's side window. The chip bag was right there on the passenger seat, a beacon of normalcy in this creepy scene. I fumbled for the keys Leo had given me, my hands slick with a sudden cold sweat. As I inserted the key into the lock, I heard another sound. This time it was a low, wet, guttural click, like someone clearing their throat, but wrong. It was too deep, too resonant. It came from the other side of the car. My hand froze on the key. I held my breath, straining to hear. Was someone hiding? Playing a prank? It had to be a prank. Slowly, I backed away from the door, keeping my phone's light pointed toward the front of the car. I began to circle around the hood, my sneakers squeaking softly on the damp concrete. The fog was so dense, I could barely see the far wall. As I rounded the front bumper, my light caught something. Two somethings. Two pale, glowing orbs, floating in the darkness about 7 feet off the ground, just behind the Mustang. They weren't lights, they were lies. They blinked, slowly, out of sync with each other. A wave of pure primal fear washed over me. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My mind screamed at me to run, but my legs were locked in place. The eyes stared, unblinking now, burning into me from across the short distance. Then, the thing they were attached to began to move. It unfolded itself from the shadows behind the car. It was impossibly tall, its limbs long and thin, moving with a disjointed, twitchy grace that was utterly inhuman. It rose to its full height, its head nearly scraping the concrete ceiling of the garage. It wasn't a person. Its skin was the color of old parchment, stretched tight over a frame that seemed all wrong angles. Two sharp joints bending in ways they shouldn't. It had no discernible face, just those two luminous, predatory eyes. A low whistle escaped its lipless mouth, a sound that vibrated in my bones. It mimicked the tune of a song that had been playing on the radio in Leo's apartment just an hour before. It was a perfect, chilling imitation. That's when I finally broke. I didn't scream. The sound was trapped in my throat, a choked, silent sob. I just turned and ran. I sprinted back the way I came, my lungs burning, my feet slapping against the ground. I didn't dare look back, but I could hear it behind me. It wasn't running. It was loping its long limbs, covering the distance with an unnatural, terrifying speed. The sound of its claws or whatever it had scraped against the concrete. A dry, scratching noise that echoed the frantic beating of my own heart. I fumbled for the elevator button, hammering it with the palm of my hand. "Come on! Come on! Come on!" I gasped, risking a glance over my shoulder. The thing had stopped about 50 feet away, standing perfectly still under one of the flickering emergency lights. It tilted its head, a gesture so eerily human it made my blood run cold. Then, it opened its mouth, and a voice came out. My voice. "Forgot the chips," it said, a perfect, mocking mimicry of my own tone. "Going to be right back." The elevator door slid open. I threw myself inside, frantically stabbing the button for Leo's floor. As the doors began to close, The creature took one long, deliberate step forward, its form seeming to warp and stretch in the dim light. Its eyes, those awful, glowing eyes, were the last thing I saw before the door sealed shut, plunging me into the safety of the brightly lit elevator car. I collapsed against the wall, shaking uncontrollably. My reflection in the polished steel was a pale, terrified stranger. When the doors opened on Leo's floor, I scrambled out and pounded on his door, screaming his name. He threw it open, his face a mixture of confusion and concern. I practically fell into his apartment, slamming and locking the door behind me, babbling incoherently about what I'd seen. He tried to calm me down, thinking I was having some kind of panic attack. He even offered to go down to the garage himself to prove nothing was there. I grabbed his arm, begging him not to go. To convince him, I pointed to the security intercom screen by his door, the one that showed a live feed of the parking garage entrance. The screen was grainy, but the image was clear. Standing just at the edge of the elevator bay, partially cloaked in the swirling fog, was the tall, gaunt figure. It wasn't moving. It was just standing there, looking directly up at the security camera. As we watched, frozen in horror, it slowly raised one of its long, spindly arms and waved. It was a slow mocking, human-like wave. Then, it turned and dissolved back into the thick, unnatural fog, leaving nothing behind but an empty, silent parking garage. We never got the chips back. Leo sold the Mustang a week later. He couldn't stand the thought of going back down there. I still have nightmares about those glowing eyes, about the sound of my own voice coming from that thing. Sometimes, when it's late and the city's quiet, I think I can hear a faint tapping sound outside my window, and the low, whistling tune of a half-forgotten song. I've learned that some cravings just aren't worth it, and I never, ever go into an empty parking garage at night. Thank you for listening. Follow for more stories that will keep you up at night. I've driven through the Arizona desert more times than I can count, but this was the first time I'd ever seen it. The sign was old, weathered wood, the letters for Gus's groceries barely clinging to life. It was late, the kind of late where the darkness feels solid, and my gas tank was flirting with empty. Pulling into the gravel lot, I noticed mine was the only car there. The store itself looked like it had been dropped from the sky a century ago and forgotten. The windows were grimy, and a singular, flickering fluorescent light hummed over the entrance, casting long, distorted shadows. I needed a restroom and maybe a bottle of water, so against my better judgment, I pushed open the heavy wooden door. A little bell, rusted and silent, failed to announce my arrival. The air inside was thick and smelled of dust, old paper, and something else. Something faintly metallic and sweet, like old pennies. The shelves were sparsely stocked with generic brand cans and boxers covered in a layer of grime. Behind the counter, a man who I assumed was Gus sat on a stool, his bucked whom staring at a small, crackling television. He didn't turn around, not even a twitch. It was unnerving. I cleared my throat. "Excuse me," I said, my voice sounding oddly loud in the oppressive silence. He still didn't move. "Sir, I just need to use your restroom." Slowly, painfully, slowly, his head began to turn. The creak of his neck was audible. His face was a roadmap of wrinkles, his eyes sunken into dark pits. He didn't smile. He just stared at me for a long, uncomfortable moment before lifting a single, bony finger and pointing toward the back of the store. I mumbled a thanks and hurried past the aisles, the feeling of his eyes burning into my back. The silence was getting to me. No humming refrigerators, no background music, just the low static from his TV and the sound of my own footsteps on the cracked linoleum. The restroom was at the end of a long, dark hallway. The door was marked with a faded, peeling sticker. As I got closer, I heard a sound from inside, a faint, wet, tearing noise. I stopped, my hand hovering over the doorknob. Maybe an employee was in there, cleaning. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. I knocked gently. "Hello? Anyone in there?" The tearing sound stopped instantly. The silence that followed was heavier than before. My heart started to pound against my ribs. I waited. Maybe they hadn't heard me. I was about to knock again when I heard a new sound. A soft, rhythmic scratching. Scratch, scratch, scratch. It was coming from the other side of the door, low down, near the floor. "Everything all right?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. The scratching stopped. A moment later, I heard a soft thump against the door, as if someone had leaned against it. I took a step back. This was all wrong. The weird store, the silent owner, and now this. My fight or flight response was screaming at me to run, to get back in my car and just keep driving, even if I ran out of gas in the middle of nowhere. But my curiosity, that stupid, fatal human trait, kept me rooted to the spot. I leaned closer, putting my ear against the cold wood of the door. For a moment, I heard nothing but my own frantic breathing. Then, a voice whispered from the other side, so close it felt like it was in my own ear. It was a strained, raspy sound, like someone trying to speak with a throat full of sand. "Help me," it rasped. My blood ran cold. It sounded like a woman, and she sounded terrified. Was she hurt? Was someone else in there with her? My earlier fear was replaced by a surge of adrenaline. "Are you okay? What's wrong?" I asked, my hand on the doorknob. The knob was icy cold. "He locked me in," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Please, you have to get me out." My mind raced. The old man, Gus. He locked her in. Why? I rattled the doorknob. It was locked, just like she said. "Okay, hang on," I said. "I'll go get the key." I turned to leave, but her voice stopped me, sharper this time. "No. Don't leave me. He'll hear you. He'll know you're here." A chill snaked down my spine. The scratching sound started again, faster this time, more frantic. "Please," she begged, her voice rising in panic. "The lock is old. Kick the door. Please, kick it in." I hesitated. Vandalizing property, but she sounded so desperate. The scratching was getting louder, turning into a frantic clawing. I took a few steps back, took a deep breath, and slammed my foot into the door right next to the knob. The old wood groaned but held. "Again," she shrieked from inside. The clawing was frenzied now, a sound of pure animal panic. I kicked again, harder this time, putting all my weight into it. There was a loud crack, and the door swung inward, slamming against the tiled wall inside. I stumbled into the small, grimy restroom, my eyes trying to adjust to the dim light. The room was empty. The single stall door was wide open. The window above the toilet was small, barred, and covered in filth. There was no one there. My heart sank into my stomach. He spooned around, scanning every corner. The room was empty. Utterly, completely empty. The scratching sound was gone. The voice was gone. All that remained was a strange, coppery smell and a deep sense of dread. Where did she go? How could she have vanished? My eyes fell to the floor, and that's when I saw it. Underneath the door, where the scratching sound had been coming from, were deep gouges in the linoleum. They weren't made by fingernails. They were too deep, too sharp. They looked like they had been made by claws. My breath caught in my throat. I slowly backed out of the restroom, my eyes locked on those marks on the floor. As I backed down the hallway, I noticed something else. On the grimy wall, at about my shoulder height, was a handprint. But it wasn't a normal handprint. It was long, slender, and the fingers were stretched, unnaturally so. It was as if someone had pressed their hand flat against the wall as they passed. But the print was wrong. It was backward. The thumb was on the wrong side. My mind refused to process what I was seeing. It felt like reality was fraying at the edges. I turned and ran. I didn't care about the gas anymore. I didn't care about anything except getting out of that store. As I burst back into the main room, I saw the old man, Gus, was no longer on his stool. The TV was now just a screen of buzzing static. The front door was wide open, swinging gently in the night breeze. I didn't stop. I sprinted through the doorway, out into the cold desert air. My lungs burning, I fumbled for my keys. my hands shaking so badly I could barely fit the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life, and I slammed the car into reverse, peeling out of the gravel lot without looking back. I drove for what felt like hours, my eyes glued to the rearview mirror, expecting to see a figure running after me with impossible speed. I didn't stop until I hit the next town, pulling into a brightly lit 24-hour gas station that felt like the safest place on earth. As I filled my tank, my hands still trembling, I noticed something on my passenger door. A long, deep scratch ran from the handle all the way to the back. It was fresh. My mind went back to the voice in the restroom. Help me. It wasn't a plea for rescue. It was a lure. It wanted me to open that door. I think about what would have happened if I'd gotten it open on the first kick. What I would have found waiting for me in that tiny, empty room. And I know, with a certainty that chills me to the bone, that the thing that was in the restroom with me is still out there, in the desert, waiting in some forgotten roadside stop for its next visitor. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like and subscribe for more. Stay safe out there. I work trail maintenance for the state, mostly on the high ridges where storms carve out the switchbacks and hikers lose their bearings. Ridge 47 was my assignment on October 12th. The directive was simple. Check the markers, update the GPS coordinates, and clear any fallen rock before snow season. Dispatch joked that the ridge was bad luck after sundown. I told her I didn't believe in that. I loaded my pack, locked the truck, and started the climb as the last bands of sunlight thinned across the canyon. The ridge opened wide above the tree line, washed in pale light. The air smelled like cold stone and old pine bark. My boots pressed into loose gravel with a steady rhythm while the handheld GPS ticked its coordinates in soft beeps. I listened for wildlife, but the canyon stayed oddly quiet. No birds, no buzzing insects, not even the usual creak of branches. I told myself the season was changing and left it at that. I settled into my pace and counted trail markers out of habit. The rock underfoot felt solid and predictable. The faint metallic scent in the wind was not. It passed so quickly that I almost doubted it, like a breath of cold iron that faded before I could decide if it had ever been real. I kept moving and tried to ignore the faint whistle behind me that sounded like the wind threading around a shape it shouldn't have to avoid. I reached marker 16 and tightened it with a small wrench. When I stepped away, the sound that followed caught my attention immediately. My boot pressed into the gravel with a crisp crunch. A second crunch landed right behind mine. It was identical in weight and timing, just a heartbeat late. I tested it again, lifting my foot slowly. I stepped. The second step answered. I swung my flashlight across the ridge. The beam reached 50 yards in both directions, without catching a figure, shadow, or animal. The body heat monitor on my radio flickered once, then showed 0 signatures. The GPS froze on a repeated coordinate, as if the ridge had stopped existing around me. I shook both devices until they responded, but neither explained the extra footstep. I kept walking. The sound followed. If I sped up, it stayed at my heels. If I slowed, it matched my slower pace. It wasn't simple mimicry. It reacted to the weight of my steps, adjusting pressure as though studying the way I moved. The silence ahead grew heavy, not natural like dusk, but thick and still, as if the ridge held its breath. The air pressure shifted. My ears popped lightly, and the hair on my forearms rose. The metallic smell returned stronger, clinging to the back of my throat. I told myself it could be a cougar shadowing me from the rocks. But cougars don't walk step for step on gravel. They don't wait for you to move before they move. The radio cracked. My name came through the speaker, my own voice. Same cadence, same tone. The signal light stayed dark. No one was on the channel. I held the radio close to my ear while the copy of my voice repeated my name softly, as if speaking right beside me. I checked the handset, tapped the screen, and turned the volume low. The voice stopped only when I did. I reached a narrow section of the ridge where the wind usually roared. This time, it died completely. The quiet pressed in so hard I could hear my pulse in my teeth. I stepped forward carefully. The answering footstep landed so close behind me that I felt the vibration through the rock. I turned my head slowly, just enough to see motion in the edge of my vision. Something shifted behind a boulder 30 feet back. Not the full form, only a sliver. A limb moved in a way the wind could not mimic. The shape pulled back the moment I focused on it. My flashlight flickered once and steadied. When I aimed it directly at the boulder, the space behind it was empty. The gravel at the base of that rock was not. It held a fresh indentation, long and narrow, deeper than any print I could make. The sight twisted something in my stomach. I stepped back toward the main trail and kept moving, trying to act like nothing had changed. My hands shook so badly I had to clip the flashlight to my pack to keep it steady. The ridge curved toward a stand of trees. The moment I entered the canopy, the temperature dropped hard enough to sting my cheeks. The soil, soft under my boots. My steps sounded muted. The second footstep did not. It stayed crisp and deliberate, as if the ground didn't absorb any sound from it. I kept my pace slow so I could listen clearly. I tested the mimicry. I stopped, suddenly. The echo stopped late, half a second behind. I dragged my foot lightly through the dirt. The answer's step dragged with the same slow scrape. I tapped my heel twice. 2 delayed taps answered. The pattern wasn't perfect. It slipped, trying to adjust, as though learning me. I tried to keep my breathing measured. Panic makes people sloppy. Sloppy gets you dead on the ridge. I moved toward the clearing where the trail widened and offered better visibility. The air carried that iron scent so strongly now it felt like I had blood in my mouth. The forest around me stayed completely still. No rustle, no night calls, just that second step following too close to ignore. At the edge of the clearing, the moment finally hit. A pressure shifted the air behind me like someone tall leaned over my shoulder. A scrape touched the back of my pack, soft and deliberate. For a second, the light around me dimmed, as if something blocked the sun, even though the sky was open. I turned fully for the first time. The space behind me was empty, but the dirt held a print that didn't belong to any animal on the ridge. Long, narrow, deep. Another print appeared as I watched, pressed into the soil without a foot to make it. The ground dipped inward as if weight shifted forward, then stopped. I backed away. Carefully! I never took my eyes off the clearing until the trail sloped downward and the truck finally came into view. The second footstep faded at the same point the ridge opened onto the road. Sound returned. The wind picked up in a normal way. Birds finally called from the trees, as if waking from sleep. My radio clicked back to life, with ordinary static. At the station, the world looked normal. My equipment worked fine. My supervisor said it was probably a cougar shadowing me or maybe an echo off the rock. I didn't argue. I signed the end of shift sheet and left. At home, the smell of iron followed me inside. I changed clothes twice before it faded. I walked down the hallway at midnight to get water. My bare foot pressed into the floor with a soft creak. A second creak answered. It landed exactly half a breath after mine. Thanks for listening. If you've ever experienced something you can't explain out in the wild, share your story in the comments below. And if you want more stories from the dark corners of the world, be sure to subscribe. Sleep well. Have you ever been alone in the woods? So deep that the silence itself feels like a presence? A silence that listens. For 3 years, I was a park ranger in the sprawling forests of the American Southwest. I'd seen my fair share of strange things, odd lights in the sky, animal tracks that just ended. But nothing could have prepared me for the night I met the thing that wore my face. It started subtly. I was on a routine patrol, miles from any trail, checking on a remote sensor station. The sun was beginning to dip below the mesas, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples. It was beautiful, but an unsettling quiet had fallen over the forest. The usual chorus of evening birds was gone. The cicadas were silent. It felt like the entire woods was holding its breath. That's when I heard it. A whistle. It wasn't a bird. It was the same tune my grandfather used to whistle when he'd take me fishing as a kid. A tune I hadn't heard in 20 years, and one I never whistled myself. I froze, my hand instinctively going to the radio on my hip. Hello, I called out, my voice sounding small in the vast emptiness. Is anyone there? The whistling stopped. Silence flooded back in, heavier than before. I tried to rationalize it. A hiker, maybe lost and trying to get attention. But who would be this far off trail, And how would they know that specific tune? I scanned the trees, my heart starting to pound a nervous rhythm against my ribs. I saw nothing but ancient pines and the deepening shadows. I dismissed it as my mind playing tricks on me, a product of solitude. But the feeling of being watched, of not being alone, clung to me like a shroud as I finished my checks and started the long hike back to my station. The ranger station was a small, one-room cabin, my little fortress against the wild. But that night, it didn't feel safe. As I locked the door and drew the curtains, I couldn't shake the unease. Primera Mave dinner, the silence of the cabin broken only by the crackle of the fire in the wood stove. Then, a soft tapping started at the window. Tap, 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 tap. My blood ran cold. My station was elevated, at least 10 feet off the ground. There was no balcony, no tree close enough for a branch to reach it. My dog, a loyal German shepherd named Bodhi, who was usually fearless, was cowering under the table, a low growl rumbling in his chest. I grabbed my heavy-duty flashlight, my knuckles white as I gripped it. Slowly, I crept towards the window and pulled back a corner of the curtain. There was nothing there, just the black, inky void of the night. But the tapping continued, now moving along the wall of the cabin, like someone was walking around the outside. 10 feet in the air, Bodhi started barking, a frantic, terrified sound I had never heard from him before. I yelled, "Who's out there?" "This is a federal facility. Identify yourself," a voice answered from right outside the door. And it was a voice I knew better than my own. It was my voice. "Hey man," it said, a perfect imitation of my own casual tone. "It's me. I forgot my keys. Can you open up?" I felt the air leave my lungs. I was inside. My keys were on the hook by the door. This was impossible. My mind was screaming, but my training kicked in. I didn't answer. I backed away from the door, grabbing the shotgun I kept for emergencies. Bodhi was going berserk, snarling and snapping at the base of the door. "Come on, open up," my voice pleaded from outside, a note of irritation creeping in. "It's cold out here. What's wrong with you?" It sounded exactly like me, the same inflections, the same slight rasp. If I hadn't been standing inside my own locked cabin, I would have believed it. Then it laughed, a dry, chilling laugh that was mine, but twisted, hollow. It was the sound of a predator toying with its prey. The handle of the door began to jiggle violently. Then, a deafening bang as something slammed against it with incredible force, shaking the entire cabin. Bodhi yelped and scrambled back. I aimed the shotgun at the door, my body trembling. "Get away from my station," I shouted, my voice cracking with fear. The thing outside went quiet. For a full minute, there was nothing but the sound of my own ragged breathing and Bodhi's whimpering. I thought maybe it had given up. Then I heard a scratching sound. Not at the door, but on the roof. Slow, deliberate scratches. The sound of long nails dragging across the metal shingles. It was Passin walking back and forth above my head. This went on for what felt like an eternity. The scratching, the pacing, and every so often a soft whisper that snaked down the chimney. It whispered my name. Not in my voice this time, but in a dry, rasping hiss that sounded ancient and full of malice. It's no my name. The sun finally began to rise, and as the first rays of light pierced through the trees, the scratching on the roof stopped. The oppressive silence was broken by the tentative chirping of a single bird. I waited, shotgun still raised, until the forest was fully awake. Bodhi, exhausted and trembling, finally came out from under the table and nudged my hand. When I finally got the courage to open the door, I found deep, gouge-like scratches all over it. They looked like they'd been made by something with claws, not human hands. But what I saw on the ground in front of the steps made my stomach turn. There were footprints in the dirt. At first, they looked like the tracks of a large coyote or a wolf, but as they got closer to the cabin, they changed. The tracks morphed, elongating, the paws becoming more like bare human feet, before they vanished completely at the base of the stairs. I didn't stay to investigate further. I packed only what was essential: got Bodhi in the truck, and radioed my supervisor. I told him I was quitting, effective immediately, due to a family emergency. I couldn't tell him the truth. Who would believe me that something had stolen my voice, that it had walked on my roof, that it had tried to trick its way into my home? The most terrifying part, the image that is burned into my mind forever, happened as I was driving away. I glanced in my rearview mirror. One last look at the cabin I had called home. Standing at the edge of the woods, just beyond the clearing, was a figure. It was tall and gaunt, its shape vaguely human but unnaturally thin. And as the morning light hit it, I saw its face. It was my face staring back at me. But the eyes were wrong. They were black, hollow pits of darkness, filled with an ancient hunger. And it was smiling, a wide, predatory smile that stretched my own features into a grotesque mask. It raised a hand and gave a slow, deliberate wave goodbye. I floored the gas pedal and didn't look back. I never went back to that forest. I live in a city now, surrounded by people and noise and light. But sometimes, in the dead of night, when the city is quiet, I think I can hear it, a faint whistle on the edge of hearing. That four-note tune from my childhood. And I know it remembers me, and it's waiting. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've ever had an encounter you can't explain out in the wild, let me know in the comments. Be sure to subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Stay safe out there. I work remote maintenance for a handful of advertising companies, mostly replace panels and reinforce metal frames along empty desert highways. On June 11th, I was assigned to a billboard retrofit 20 miles outside Las Almas. The plan was simple: inspect the old mounts, anchor a new frame, wait for a spotter to show up later. My supervisor laughed and said the desert has a way of making workers think someone is behind them, and that old-timers blame the shapes on skinwalker sightings. I told him heat can twist anything if you stare long enough. At 3:14 p.m., I parked beside an empty pullout and opened the truck bed. The heat pressed down on everything. Sand glittered in long stretches, and the air shimmered enough to bend the horizon. The billboard towered above the desert floor, its faded surface peeling like sunburnt paint. When I grabbed my tool bag, the metal handle burned my palm through the glove. A faint metallic smell drifted across the flat land. It reminded me of old blood on iron. The highway behind me stayed silent, except for a single distant gust of wind that never reached the ground. I anchored my harness to the safety line and double-tested the clamps. Up close, the ladder rungs felt gritty from years of blowing sand. As I climbed halfway, the desert stretched under me in a long unbroken line. No cars, no footprints, no birds. The silence was so complete it felt unnatural, like the world paused while I hung between the billboard and the sky. The line tugged slightly at my hip. I glanced down. Nothing moved. I climbed to the platform and knelt beside the western bracket. The metal had warped from years of sun exposure. My wrench clanked against the frame, echoing into the open space, as if something listened from far beyond the ridge. The rope at my waist pulled again, firmer this time. I braced my knee against the beam and looked down. The line stretched straight into the dirt, taut and unmoving, like something heavy leaned back on it. The metallic scent thickened. It stuck in my throat and made the back of my tongue taste like pennies. My radio clicked twice. Not static. Two deliberate sharp clicks that reminded me of a tap on glass. I checked the display. No incoming transmissions. As I leaned to adjust the bracket, the rope tightened with a controlled pull that shifted my entire balance. I almost thanked the spotter before remembering he was not supposed to arrive for another hour. I called out anyway. Instinct, more than logic. My voice carried across the open desert, came back thinner, and died quickly. No reply returned. The rope eased slightly, then tightened again in a slow, steady rhythm. Not wind. Not mechanical. Intentional. Intentional. A cold pressure spread across the back of my neck. The sensation of being observed with complete focus. I climbed higher to install the upper mount. The sunlight dimmed slightly, even though the sky above remained cloudless. The platform creaked under my boots. As I reached for the new bolt, the safety line jerked with a sudden, powerful grip that hauled me upright. It saved me from slipping, but the movement was perfectly timed. too precise to be chance. The desert below remained empty. The rope pointed straight at a patch of ground with no shadow. A low sound carried across the flats, something like a long breath released by a giant lung. It rose and fell in uneven pulses. My radio clicked again, and a distorted voice spoke my name in a slow, drugging tone. The cadence was almost correct, but the vowels bent, like someone imitating speech from memory alone. The signal indicated no devices within range. I scanned the brush line and froze. A tall figure stood near the base of the billboard. Its outline wavered, as if the heat around it moved a shape in slow, unnatural pulses. The arms hung too low and the head tilted forward with rigid precision. The body looked like a rough guess at a person, not a finished version. My chest tightened. My supervisor's joke echoed faintly in my mind. The desert stories always started with something standing too still. I blinked once. The figure had moved 20 feet closer. No steps. No blur of movement, just a shift in position. Like reality took a shortcut around the distance. I watched the safety line. It trembled in a slow pulse that matched the odd rhythm of the radio clicks. The figure angled its head upward toward the platform, and the temperature of my skin dropped as though the sun dimmed behind something I could not see. I reached for the ladder, but the rope refused to slacken. It held me in place with a careful amount of pressure, neither painful nor gentle. When I tugged harder, the line responded with a firmer hold, like someone tightening their grip. The figure stood almost directly beneath me now. Its shape bent at the torso in a human suggestion of looking up, but the angle was too sharp, like it had not learned which joints existed where. On instinct, I grabbed the frame and tried to unhook myself from the rope. The clasp did not release, not jammed. Held. A faint vibration traveled through the fibers, running down the line in short, deliberate pulses. The ground around the figure shimmered. The outline stretched taller for a moment, as though the shape inhaled. The platform groaned under my boots. The light dimmed, just enough to dull the metal's shine. I yelled down at the figure, even though I knew it would not answer. My voice cracked, carrying nowhere. The figure leaned forward slightly. That was enough. The rope slackened without warning, as if whatever held it had let go. I grabbed a ladder and climbed down fast, every rung feeling colder than the last. When my boots touched the ground, the desert felt wrong. Heavy, like pressure from above, pushed everything downward. The figure no longer stood beneath the billboard, but a faint impression marked the sand where it had been. My radio clicked one final time. A faint whisper of my name followed, stretched and thin, as if the voice traveled a long distance through something not meant to carry sound. I unhooked the harness with shaking hands and threw the safety line into the bed of the truck. As I drove away, the billboard shrank in the rearview mirror. In the shimmering heat, I thought I saw a tall shadow perched on the upper frame, watching the road. The image blurred as the distance grew, but the shape remained until I turned a bend and lost sight of the structure. At home, I hung the safety line on its hook in the garage. The fibers held a perfect indentation halfway along the length. Not a knot. Not wear. The unmistakable shape of a hand that had gripped it hard enough to leave the memory of pressure behind. When I touched it, the rope vibrated once, like something far out in the desert had tugged back.